After spending more than half of his life on death row, Taborn Honey is set to die by lethal injection.
But the worst thing about what this does to the victim families of the person who is murdered is ask them to prolong their healing process for decades. Wait till we kill the guy, then you'll feel better.
When I heard that Taborn Honey was going to be executed, I wanted to do everything that I could to save his life. I've been following death penalty action for about a year or so now, following other executions, signing petitions against other executions. And I reached out, and that first Zoom call found out that the current voice for anti-death penalty in Utah had become dormant, and we needed to reignite that.
When it became clear that Utah was about to carry out its first execution in 14 years, Death Penalty Action was invited to help elevate the voices of Utahns who oppose executions. With less than 1 week's notice, working with faith leaders, legal professionals, civil and human rights leaders, and others, Death Penalty Action helped local organizers create a series of public events worthy of media coverage, earning more than $1 million worth of mass media exposure for our message.
Capital punishment is an offense against the inviolability of life and the dignity of the human person, which does not render justice to the victims and their families, but rather fosters vengeance.
Conservatives are concerned about the death penalty because even when culpability is not in question, capital punishment is arbitrarily and unfairly administered by government.
And rather than spend $200,000 on a drug that, when used as prescribed here, is fatal, might that money be better used for restitution and healing?
We've got a few minutes for one-on-ones, and then we're going to gather. We're going to walk up the stairs and deliver our letter and our petition to the governor.
Share this with you. So, thank you.
We are here outside of the prison, Utah prison, to give a voice for Taborn Honey.
I come all the way down here from Ohio, not to cry with you, but to try with you. Let's try to end this.
Everyday Utahns who saw our messages in the media were inspired to find and join the protests and come together as a new set of leaders for a newly invigorated state anti-death penalty organization. The death penalty is a failed government policy morally, economically, and socially, and is counter to the teachings of most faith traditions. Join us. Together, we can make the difference.
And welcome, everybody. My name is Abe Bonowitz with Death Penalty Action, and this is The Forecast. It's a special edition because several execution dates have been set since the last edition. Normally, we do this on the first Sunday evening of each month, and now we've got a situation where Florida is setting dates, 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. In fact, we just had an execution in Florida last Thursday. Was it Thursday? And now it was Tuesday, and now we've got another one this coming Thursday. And nobody's been talking about it because it's so fast and it's so hard to keep up. We're going to kind of think about that and talk about that a little bit too. So this is a space where everybody is welcome, and you're welcome to put your comments in the chat and in the comments on the various social media streams. However, anybody that is being disruptive or counter to our purposes, in other words, opposed to the death penalty, will be summarily dismissed, and there will be no warning. So just a heads up on that. And also, if you're not speaking as a staff or board member of Death Penalty Action, then you're speaking for your own organization in terms of those of us who will be speaking tonight. We're grateful to have a whole, a lot of people from a lot of different states that we're getting, some special guests tonight too. So we're going to try to get into it and be quick about it pretty quickly. And we're going to start tonight. We're going to go sometimes we go in order of the upcoming executions. And tonight we're going to kind of work backwards a little bit and start with the last execution that's scheduled in September. And that brings us to Alabama and Esther Brown. to share a bit with us about Jeffrey West. And Ali will put the link to the petition and the link to Project Hope to abolish the death penalty into the chat and into the social media comments. And with that, welcome, Esther Brown. We're glad you're with us, and we're sorry to see you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. I'm with Project Hope to abolish the death penalty. I'm the executive director. My board is on death row. It is the only death row organization founded on death row all the way back to '89, and I'm the outside person. So all executions hit us pretty closely. And so we have Jeff West on September 25th. And of course, as usual, ineffective assistance of counsel. That is, I think you can, that's just about the rule, because they pay very little for the attorneys they appoint. I've investigated some. We had a divorce attorney. You don't know, you get the idea. And I've been around the death penalty for 40 plus years, and I never met a rich one. So anyway, Jeff West had poor representation, and it was perfectly fine for the prosecutor to tell the jurors when the attorney was about to make his closing statement, okay, and now here comes the fairy tale, just like the whole thing. In other words, nothing, right? It's worth nothing. The very big thing is that they are going to kill him by asphyxiation. And we were the first state, Alabama's first and everything bad, and last and everything good. I was told, it's true, that started with that. And we have quite a few things going on in that respect. And I don't know whether the Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood is on tonight, but he is working, and he's, you know, there are all kinds of events coming up with that. And also 2 days before Jeff's execution, September 23rd, there will be a press conference. There have been various events. We had a press conference about asphyxiation this week, and it got some publicity, which is good. But the big thing is that the Reverend Dr. Jeff Floyd is going all out. And there he is. And really showing how cruel and, well, let's just say disgusting this method of execution is. And so, in a way, that is where our focus is. Will we stop it? You know, this is Alabama, but at the same time, word is getting out, and that, I think, is so really, really important. And maybe the Reverend Jeff Wood could say something about it.
Sure. And Esther, thank you. Yeah, here's Jeff Hood to share a bit about what he's got, what's planned. And, you know, we're all working on building our petitions up for delivery, both in advance of Jeffrey West's execution and then the ones that are coming up in October. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't have much to say except just wanted to show everybody this mask. This is the exact mask that is currently being used in Alabama and Louisiana for their nitrogen executions. It's also the mask that is being proposed to be used in Arkansas and other states. I don't know if it's how it's working here, but anyways, I just wanted to briefly show you how this thing works. And obviously, this is a hose that proceeds to nitrogen. It's got a 5-point harness on the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is intended to go around the head as tight as possible. I'm not going to try it on, but if I did, you would be able to see that it is impossible to get an airtight seal on this thing, which means that oxygen is getting in and nitrogen is getting out, um, which poses a great danger to everyone in the chamber. But also, it's beginning to show why it's taking so long for nitrogen to kill, and that's because they're not able to keep the nitrogen within the mask. Um, I have I'll say this and then I'll stop. I've cut off all of the oxygen to this mask, sealed all of these holes, and I have been able to keep this thing on. The last time I tried it, I kept it on for 28 minutes. And so that should tell you how long someone could keep this on and remain breathing, even as tight as it can go, which again is supposed to be an airtight seal. Yeah, it's supposed to, it should suffocate you to death even if there was no nitrogen in it, but that's not the case. So this is the Allegro mask from Walter Industries. And so if anybody tells you it's just a little bitty oxygen mask that you would wear at the dentist or something like that, that's not reality. I and everybody else who's seen one of these has seen this mask in operation.
And it's actually, it's a respirator. Allegro Industries is known to make safety equipment. And you might recall that last year, we took Gary Drinkard, who's now the board chair of Witness to Innocence and an Alabama death row survivor, and a few others of us went up to visit the headquarters of Walter Surface Technologies, which is in Connecticut. And we had legislation to actually try to prohibit that. Let me just share my screen here and show on the Death Penalty Action webpage. If you just scroll down a bit past the upcoming executions to past where you can put some money in to help us do this work, past these links to here are our current featured campaigns, you can find the petition. And now if you could drop the link to this into to the petition that we have about saying no to to nitrogen gas suffocation. There's a picture of the mask that Jeff was just demonstrating, and then this is kind of written as a catch-all so that we can use the signatures and address both the corporations that are doing this, that are providing these tools, and not disavowing them. That's our ask of the corporations, because obviously you can buy this on Amazon and directly from them, and we have no quarrel with the fact that they're making what's supposed to be safety equipment, but they should disavow the use of their safety equipment for the purpose of killing people, just as the drug manufacturers have disavowed the use and disallowed also the use of their drugs. So we're up to 27,000 signatures on this. We invite people to sign this and share it, and we'll keep using it both in legislative situations as well as Jeff, that's kind of spooky. Halloween is not quite here yet, we invite people to keep signing that. And then in Alabama, when we do our petition deliveries, what we have is a petition. Let's see, I'm not going to show this right now, but Ali, please drop also the pull back the curtains petition. And that petition goes to the issue of demanding that if the witnesses to the executions should see the full process from the time the prisoner is wheeled in his or her wheelchair or walks into the death chamber, that the witnesses watch the whole thing. And this comes about from an execution a couple of years ago. I think it was Joe James Jr., is that right? Where he spent more than 2 hours on the gurney, being poked and prodded and cut down. And then when they finally brought the media in and the witnesses, they opened up the curtains, and he was already unconscious because he had, it turns out, had been fighting them, and they had started the process. And we knew that because he had a final statement prepared, and we knew that. And when they asked him for his final words, he didn't say anything. He didn't move. And then they went on with the execution. So ever since then, and it was after that that Kenny Smith and Alan Miller, those executions failed, and they were sent back to their cells. And that's when Alabama shifted to gas suffocation executions. Esther, anything you want to add about
that? I just wanted to say that when we did the press conference and Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood put on the mask, he only had it on for 5 minutes. And when he took it off, you could see the marks. I don't know whether it's happened yet, Jeff, but so it is not comfortable. I mean, but besides, it's got to be terrifying. It's obviously, it has marks all the way around his forehead and the side.
Yeah, it's gruesome and it's heavy duty.
Yeah, you can see some of it.
It is, it was remarkable. It was 5 minutes for the press conference, and he was really badly marked.
Right. Well, so there you have it. We're going to continue to advocate for Jeffrey West, and then after that will be Anthony Boyd. Is that right?
Who is our chairman?
Yeah, the chairman of the board of his schedule is towards his execution is scheduled towards the end of October. We'll talk more about that, but certainly know that they've got another one scheduled. And anyway, there's a lot of work to do.
Abe, I was going to quickly say before we move on that we're going to be having a number of events and whatnot, as Esther said, for people to be involved. We want people to know. Obviously, we hadn't gotten in a situation yet where people can actually see what's going on. So I feel like, as far as nitrogen is concerned, it's one of the reasons that we got the mask, is that we want people to actually have to deal with it. And I'm sure that there was a number of people who were uncomfortable sitting here and watching me in that thing. It should be uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable to wear it. It's uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable when it got to the house and to see my kids walking around holding it. And so again, we want people to be able to touch this thing and see this thing. One more thing, on September the 4th, Anthony's attorneys are going to be having a hearing in the Middle District of Alabama that they're seeking to challenge nitrogen on its face as a cruel and unusual punishment. And so that's going to be a big moment. I was talking to them today, and they said that they have, anyways, a dozen, maybe more witnesses lined up, and they're hopeful that they're going to get a witness from every single nitrogen execution that's taken place in Alabama. So
finally, there's an opportunity to put nitrogen suffocation on trial itself. There has not actually been a hearing where the process itself and the exam and the experiences of, how many have there been? 6, 7?
Five in Alabama and then one in Louisiana. Is it 6 total?
I think it's 6. So it's still brand new. I mean, it's January will be 2 years since they started trying this. It's experimental, and it's finally going to be on trial. So before we go,
I see Sandy's comment. Sandy Joy says, you have more faith in the reactions of the public to seeing gas things than I do. All I can say, Sandy, is just keep the faith, my friend. Keep the faith.
That's right. All right, we're going to need to move along. So thank you, Jeff and Esther. Ali, what have you got? And then we're going to bring in Gigi.
Yeah, before we move on, we had a question about David Lee Roberts. That execution was supposed to happen recently, and he got a stay. So if any of you guys could elaborate a bit on that situation, that would be helpful.
That is why Gigi is here. So, Gigi.
Hi, thanks, Abe. And yeah, I'll be able to answer those questions. Unfortunately, my biggest announcement is that right now we have no news other than David, of course, was granted a stay, and he was evaluated last week. We have not seen the report yet. That should be filed anytime in terms of, so he was evaluated for competency, the competency report needs to be filed, and then the legal team will assess. And when I can make announcements when something has been done, I will, of course, share it with this group. Really, our major call to action for David right now is to just continue to submit the letters to the governor. This is not a case where we're connecting signatures. The email is set up to actually go straight to the governor's office, and it does not go to a general email account. It is going straight to the governor's office. I think we have about 450 that have been sent so far from Alabama residents and about 326 from non-Alabama residents. I'd love to get both of those numbers up to 1,000 if I could, and I don't see why we can't. Also, while you're at David's website, the media page has been updated. There is an op-ed there from one of David's jurors, Dan Pierce, who did vote. The jury on this case did vote for life without parole, and this is one of the cases that was unfortunately subject to judicial override. So if you would like to go look at that and share that on social media. And then the legal team, we actually put a press release out that the Alabama Political Reporter and a few radio stations have picked up that is there as well. So that's the easiest way to get news out about David's case. Go to our media page, share the most recent news, and how you can help tells you all the ways that you can help. And that's really the biggest update that we have right now. We're just in a waiting game, and we hope, of course, that in the interim, the governor can grant clemency at any time. We don't have to keep going through this. The man is a paranoid schizophrenic on death row. He needs to be getting treatment and not medicated just to be killed.
So Gigi, first, congratulations to you and the legal team and everybody, because that execution was supposed to be this past Thursday and it didn't happen. We're also grateful. And I was just curious that is that on purpose, the David Lee Roberts name beating like a heartbeat there? Was that a glitch in my browser?
I would love to say it was on purpose, but that was a glitch in the matrix. But we'll take it as a serendipitous glitch. And
sure. Okay. Well, thank you for all of your hard work, and we know that you're also working with some folks in Missouri. We'll talk about that in a little while. So we're grateful and thank you. And with that, we'll move on to Texas real quick. And Danny, if you want to join us to talk about Blaine Milam. This is Danny Allen, and she is a friend of Blaine's, and actually I see her every other Friday night when I'm on the prison show with Danny, which is a radio show on the public radio station in Houston that broadcasts to many of the Texas prisons and is now actually available on tablets for more than 900 prisoners across the country. So anyway, welcome, Danny. And there's not a whole lot that anybody's talking about with Blaine. He had an execution date some time ago, got a stay. There's a lot of information about that in the petition. We're going to put the petition in the chat here. But he's got an intellectual disability claim that ultimately the Supreme Court decided wasn't enough. And so if you could, Danny, please share a little bit about Blaine and how he's doing and anything else you want to add.
Well, right now, he's actually had 2 execution dates. This is his 3rd. He's been given a stay twice. But his attorneys feel like more optimistic this time than they have the past few times. Aside from the regular things that happen in prison, the food, and if anyone's keeping track of Texas, they know that there's a lot of units on lockdown. Polunsky and a few other units have been on this perpetual lockdown. It's loop after loop, and they're not getting to go to commissary on a regular basis. They're not get their food. I brought to the board meeting last week. Their food is like this much rice. That's it, in a styrofoam cup, and a bag of Frosted Flakes, one of those little boxes. No milk.
Danny, when you say board meeting, you mean the Texas Department of Criminal Justice board meeting, right?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm so used to talking to people around here about it. Yes, they hold a board meeting where we can talk under public comments if something is not on the agenda. So, I brought up the fact that, Blaine, I emailed my concerns also because you follow it up with an email. But at any rate, for everything that's going on in his life right now, his mother passed away a few months ago. His brother had a heart attack. His sister got thrown out of her house, her children taken, and now she's in a rehab. This all happened within a few months' time, and plus he got his execution date. So for everything going on in his life, aside from the execution date, he is trying to remain optimistic. He, is constantly updated by his attorneys. A lot of these men and women are not. So he's grateful in that respect. But they have a lot of stuff coming down the line. Some major, they're very optimistic at this point. Of course, I'm very superstitious and I don't want to, push the envelope too much, but he is cautiously optimistic. Let me put it that way.
But does he have legal claims that are still
Yes.
pursued? Do you know anything about that?
There's some well, Blaine, people do not know this, but Blaine has always maintained his innocence. He, of course, he's not saying he was not there. He has always maintained he was not the one who committed the murder. So I think things are now, with advances in DNA, they're able to. We're hoping that they'll do some DNA testing, and we're hoping.
I'm going to just share my screen again and get us and show. Let's see if we can find this. Here we are. Yeah, I don't recall hearing about the innocence claim, and that's always and in that sense, we're talking about a law of parties situation, so present but not the actual killer. Is that right?
That is correct, and he never had any. I mean, it was his word against his ex-girlfriend. So, I mean, they never really pursued anything until advances in DNA have cropped up. So they're able to do more testing. And that's where, and if people aren't familiar with the case, there were bite marks. So, and that was part of the murder.
Sure. Well, I just want to point out so we put the link in the chat, and this is the petition here, and you can see, you have the ARC of the United States, the ARC of Texas. That's the Association of Retarded Citizens, Disability Rights Texas, the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. All of them filed an amicus brief, which you can read, and in arguing that he has intellectual disability, and just by definition, he should be ineligible for execution, and yet so significantly impaired intellectual functioning, significantly impaired adaptive functioning, et cetera, et cetera. These are issues that were litigated a long, long time ago. Rather, the U.S. Supreme Court in this Atkins decision basically said, we do not execute people who have intellectual disability in this country, except the problem is they didn't set a definition, or they didn't set the bar of what IQ it is. So that's constantly back and forth from state to state. And that's one of the issues in this. And the challenge, Danny, and everybody, is that Nobody's talking about this. I mean, even if you go to the Texas Coalition webpage, it's all about Robert Robertson. They have 2 sentences about Blaine Milam, and there is lots to talk about in that case too. And that's why we're making sure to talk about it. We're going to be making noise about it. And everybody's invited to be calling up the governor in Texas and the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles and Texas legislators, anybody that you can bug about this. That's what we need to do, because if it's not us, it seems like it's nobody else is doing anything, and because the Supreme Court has dismissed that case, you have to wonder, are those organizations that were involved in the amicus brief still clamoring for him to not be executed? We're going to have to find that out and encourage them to continue to be calling out on this issue. Danny, please give Blaine our best wishes and know that people are.
He did say thank y'all for having this tonight. He appreciates it. And he also wanted y'all to make sure to be on the lookout for the next filing. So.
Oh, excellent. Well, it's good to know. I thought this was done with the Supreme Court dismissal. So it's good to know that he's still fighting. His lawyers are still fighting. And there may be something that can happen to intervene in that execution. So amen. Anything else you want to say, Danny?
No, but thank y'all so much. It's thank y'all. I appreciate it. He's one of my very best friends, and he is so nice. Yeah, thank y'all.
I'll let him know there's lots of people praying for him and signing the petitions. He's got over 16,000 signatures now. We're going to try to get that up to maybe 20,000. And who knows, we can all figure out a petition delivery for him if it comes down to it. So, so thank you again, Danny. Let's now shift to, are we ready, Florida? Are Florida people here? There's Grace. So we have a situation in Florida where these people are being kept busier than they could ever have imagined. 2 or 3 execution dates pending at the same time. And with us now is the organizer for Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, Grace Hanna, and Bridget is here in the background somewhere. And I think we also have a friend, and we'll be hearing from them too. So take it away, Grace. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Abe. And yes, Bridget and Kevin are both here. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to give some context about kind of what's happening in Florida. Then Bridget is going to talk about Curtis Wyndham, who is scheduled for execution this Thursday evening. And then I am going to talk, and then Kevin, who is joining us from San Egidio, the community of San Egidio, is going to talk about his relationship with Curtis. He's been his pen pal. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about David Pittman, who is scheduled for execution on September 17th. So, for context, whenever I talk about the death penalty in Florida, I like to say, and situated in the fact that we have the most expansive capital punishment sentencing scheme in the country. In Florida right now, it is possible to be sentenced to death for a non-homicide crime. And it is possible to be sentenced to death with a jury vote of 8-4. So every other state except for Alabama has a 10-2 thing going on, but every other state requires unanimity. It requires unanimity to send someone to jail for stealing a bag of chips. It does not require unanimity in Florida to sentence someone to death. This is very likely unconstitutional, but has not been decided on by the courts yet. So that persists. And in 2025, we have really been just unprecedented pace of executions. So Governor DeSantis started off the year fast with signing warrants and has continued to go at a really unprecedented pace. Honestly, I think we've had 21 warrants since he's been in office, 20 or 21. We are about to have our 13th execution of the year, 12th, 13th, Bridget, 11th with 12 and 13, 12 scheduled, and we're sure that 13 is going to be scheduled any day because it seems that right before or right after an execution, he signs a warrant for the next one. That's kind of the last thing I'll say to situate Florida, is that in most other states, there is some way to tell who is going to be executed next. So if there are folks on death row, in the order their appeals were exhausted, that is who is next up in line for execution. Florida is different in that the governor of Florida solely gets to choose who is going to be executed and when, and we really have no insight into that process. And so that means that the 300 people on Florida death row every day are in their cells. I always like to say they're unair conditioned cells in Florida. And they could hear, clanking and the door opens, and it could be the warden coming in to read them their death warrant. And right then and there, they're taken to death watch and they have 30 days to live. So, yeah, I just like to say it's a very tense time. And Bridget is going to talk a little bit about the kind of arbitrariness or the cruelty of that warrant selection process with Curtis Wyndham. And then Kevin actually is going to talk a bit about that as well. So I'll pass to them.
Hi, everyone, and I apologize for looking like a mad woman. I am just now walking in the door from school where I had the opportunity to tell our criminal justice clinic. I go to school in New York, and we work with the Legal Aid Society and the Bronx Defenders. Bronx Defenders have been on quite a few Florida cases this year, and so I had the opportunity to talk about everyone who was executed this year. So forgive me, I just sort of walked in the door. I do want to also say before going into Curtis's case that the clinic I'm actually going to be doing the virtual vigil at school, and they're going to put it up where they would normally put up their PowerPoints and whatnots. I'm laughing because the idea of my classmates being there with me is embarrassing, but nonetheless, an amazing thing. My professor has been really, really lovely and wonderful, and they are all really looking forward to joining and doing more. So please join us on Thursday if this godforsaken thing does go through, which I'm hoping it does not.
We're gonna have to make sure that we can interact with all those people, and it's not the first time we'll be on a big board at a school lecture hall during a vigil.
I know, just the first time that it's mine, and I said that I was like, we've been waiting for that 17 times.
Class, but we did it in Alabama last year, but it was a see who comes event. But I'm like so excited about what you've created there. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to tell Abe in person so you could all see, or on virtual so you could all see his reaction. But anyways, these are the people who are in public defenders in the Bronx every single day and interested in doing, the really serious work at Rikers and stuff like that. So that being said, I also want to thank the wonderful Miss Grace and everyone who spoke before me. It was actually Grace's birthday yesterday. Weird place to bring that up, but it feels like it needs to be said because she has just been amazing. You can tell we're probably both a little emotional with everything going on. We've been talking to a lot of family members. That brings me to Curtis's case. So I was going to start with the family members, but I'm going to actually start with how this warrant was signed because we've actually gotten a little bit of pushback about that. And so I think that it's important to be very, very clear. Governor DeSantis has always been solely responsible for who is to live and who is to die when they are warrant eligible. That has always been the case. There are 3 other members of the clemency board. One is the AG who brings him the warrant. One is the CFO, who at this point is someone who led the non-unanimous jury bill. His name is Blaise Ingoglia. So that's the clemency board is a farce. The Florida Supreme Court was appointed by DeSantis, the majority, and immediately coming into the court undid 4 incredibly important death penalty decisions. Since then, like Grace said, we have had expansion bill after expansion bill, execution after execution. It's been, she can't keep count. I'm losing count too. In 2023, I was so proud that I could remember everything. We are in a really, really, really dark space. And I want to acknowledge everyone's pain and frustration, which brings me to Curtis and how Curtis got here, because we're always wondering how people are selected. And the crime is important and the victims are important. And I'm going to get to them in a second because it's actually family members. But first, Curtis is the only Black man who has 3 Black victims. He's the only person on death row who has 3 Black victims. Why does that matter? Florida doesn't execute people. Florida does not execute white people who have killed Black people. In fact, they can't even find one on the row to execute. They said that in their filing. That shows us who's being sentenced to death. That's why it matters. We also know that Florida's row is primarily white. And that is not to say kill more white people, kill more Black people, care about these victims, don't care about these victims. We all know why we're here is because we care about all of those things. The reality of the situation is that in all of that time, until Kyle Bates and before Curtis Windham, Governor DeSantis was responsible for 15 executions, only 2 victims in all of those. And you have heard these cases. There are multiple victims. In fact, these are some of the most egregious crimes you've ever seen. 2 were Black. He was hit with a 1983 civil rights claim regarding racism and warrant selection for that reason. That's because Kyle Bates killed a white woman. And that's very different than other cases that we have seen in terms of most aggravated and least mitigated. Curtis was signed prior to Governor DeSantis answering that lawsuit. Curtis was the only person on Florida's death row with 3 Black victims. DeSantis had 2. And in his response to Kyle Bates' 1983 filing, he heavily, if not entirely, relied on the fact that he had signed warrants for 5 Black victims. He more than doubled his number by signing Curtis Windham's death warrant. And why can I sit here and confidently tell you all today that this warrant was signed in retaliation for Kyle Bates calling out a system that didn't start with DeSantis, but is his responsibility now? That is because there is not a single family member who is directed to the victim who is outwardly speaking for this. I have had the pleasure, and Grace has had the pleasure, and Kevin is going to tell you more, of meeting the family members of 3 of Curtis's victims, one of whom is his daughter, who lost her mother and her grandmother at the hands of her father. Governor DeSantis is speaking about this issue now. About 4 weeks ago, we pushed him, I guess, a little bit too much. He decided to speak for really the first time. And in one of the 3 tweets that he tweeted about the death penalty, he said, it gives solace to all of the victims' family members once this happens. That was like 3 days ago. So we are dealing in a monstrous place with a monstrous act, and every single one of these executions is a monstrous thing. But Curtis is not a monster, and I will tell you this, Curtisia is not, and her family is not. And Curtis's son, whose mugshot was wrongfully used in a news article reporting on Curtis, he and his children didn't deserve that. They don't deserve that. And Curtisia didn't deserve getting a call from the state asking if she would like to go and see her father die, to then only be told, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't know you existed, because we care about victims, except when we don't know who they are. So Curtis is probably going to die on Thursday, and we are going to tear apart another family. And what's going to be different about this one is that these are people who were torn apart 30 years ago when she lost her mother and her grandmother. And Curtis killed his best friend. His son made a video that is available that I will send to all of you, where he had the courage to say that he didn't want Curtis to die because he saw him as a father, because he was his father's loved one. And you know what? He is no longer with us. And that is what we have of him, is a plea to save Curtis's life. And Curtisia lost another friend. This is Florida's death penalty. This is it. And I know that people have been here for years and decades doing this work longer, working harder than I have. We are in a bad place, but I feel with every single fiber of my being that we are going to end this. I cannot wait for the day that I get to come on here with all of you. And this is over, not just for Alabama, not just for Florida, not just for Texas, wherever it is, because this is literally the last gasping bits of this horrific, monstrous system. I thank you all for showing up, for caring. I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. I know that we can't stop this. I wish more than anything that we could. But what we are doing here matters. Get sick of hearing it, because you know what? It does. And it matters to that family, and it matters to us. And if it doesn't matter to anybody else, it matters to me that you all are here and fighting this. So,
Bridget, before you introduce Kevin, I brought Allie on too. She doesn't even know I was going to do this, but we're working on a program about self-care and about dealing with this kind of trauma, and especially folks like you and Grace and everybody in Florida that is, we saw what happened in Missouri. They had 5 executions last year, and they, some of the staff had to move along because it was too much. So we want you to take care of yourself. We want everybody that's involved in this to be taking care of yourselves. Allie, do you want to share just a little bit about what's coming together and where we might see that?
Sure. So our plans keep kind of getting backtracked a little bit, but we are working on an Instagram Live because we don't normally do those kinds of events. We're usually like on Restream and Zoom. So I wanted something that was a different format. And Grace is going to be with us. And then we also have somebody else that Abe connected us to named Jordan. It's probably not going to come together until closer to the end of next month because Jordan is away and I won't be able to discuss the plan with her for a couple more weeks, but I know how much it's impacted me being so close to this work, getting to know people who have been executed. And I mean, I talked to my therapist and psychiatrist about it and other people, but nobody really understands what this is like until you're in it. And I feel like really out of place when I talk about it with other people. It's like, why are you so upset about this? Like, it just like doesn't click until like you're right in front of it. So that was kind of my idea, but also we're always told to take care of ourselves and self-care, but I don't believe we can only focus on ourselves when we're not taking care of each other. That is a very American individualistic way to look at taking care of ourselves. So yes, we can talk about self-care, but I do want to do it in the context of community care. So it's coming together. Be looking out for that later next month.
And thank you for that, Allie, and your comment, Bridget. Just now quickly, before we hear from Kevin, I'm just going to share again. This is the Death Penalty Action webpage, and here you can find the petitions for Curtis and David and Florida. And we'll be talking about Ralph in a moment, Ralph Menzies, but here's the petition for Curtis. And if you get in here, you'll see, as we always do, if there's a campaign, if there's a petition from the state, we point to that. And also we try to create some links. Most of this information comes straight from Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty. Here's a video that I shared in the email today also about, it's a 10-minute video. We'll let you watch it yourselves. But this is the victims' families speaking out in support of clemency for Curtis Wyndham. So go ahead and find this petition, sign it. And similarly with David Pittman, I'm not even sure if we've gotten through building this one yet. We still have to do some work to get this, because we're so backed up. So in any case, that's what's there. Bridget, would you please introduce Kevin for us?
Yes, I would love to introduce Kevin. I'm so sorry that I had to do that before Kevin came on. I promise that he's going to be much more of a reasonable voice. Kevin is with San Egidio Community. If those don't know or don't have the pleasure of knowing the amazing folks both in, oh God, I hate the word folks, both in Rome and here. They are an amazing asset for you. We love to do Cities for Life every November. They have just been an amazing ally for a very, very long time, but they reached out specifically because one of their members has had a very, very long time relationship with Curtis. And it's been a really wonderful opportunity to work with the team. And actually the video that you're watching, you were able to hear it because of Kevin. It came to us in a DVD file that I tried my best to finagle, and Kevin got it fixed and working and perfect. And now everyone is able to actually hear this. And he's just been instrumental in all of this. I'm sure he will say, no, it's not me. It's all of the other people too, which I'm hoping he will share, that there is an amazing team over there. And I know that they're just eager to help. And so Kevin, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here for the family, for us, and for the movement. It is an honor to introduce you to our friends.
Before Kevin jumps in, I want to say that it came to us in a DVD file because the victim's family in this case has been opposed to the execution since DVD files were like the standard
Right.
form of sending videos around. So this is not news to the state. But back to Kevin.
Right. No, thank you. Thank you, Bridget and Grace, for all the work that you've been doing on Curtis's behalf. And thank you to all of you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here the first time that I've been on one of these webinars, and very consoling to see the work that you do in the face of so much of what could be despair. And so I'm taking a lot of hope from this experience of being here with all of you. Bridget did an amazing job of summarizing, first just to mention, as Bridget said, I'm part of the community of Sant'Egidio, which has been working against the death penalty for several decades now. And one program of that is pen pal friendships, especially between people in our community in Italy, but more kind of in the last few years trickling into the United States as well, with people on death row. So I was connected to Curtis through a friend in Rome, and I've gotten the opportunity to know him over the past few years. Bridget and Grace, and probably a lot of other people here, know much more about the legal aspects of this. I am not a lawyer. I do not pretend to be. I am married to a lawyer, which was maybe my mistake. But I just wanted to share two things about Curtis from this past year of, and I've been communicating with him for a couple of years, but from this past year, as Grace, I think, was mentioning, the kind of arbitrariness of who was selected in Florida for executions. Curtis shared with me on multiple occasions this fear, this anxiety that he would be next, not knowing whether he would make it through the year, saying in his letters, my biggest fear is that I'm not going to make it through this year. The governor is signing death warrants left and right. And I think just the anxiety, the mental toll that takes on the guys who are on death row, particularly in Florida right now. I just wanted to highlight their anxiety and their agony that they're experiencing in this moment. People who are in similar situations to Curtis. And the second thing is that actually, I just spoke with the family this afternoon with his daughter Curtizia, hearing that she, her siblings, Curtis's other children, are able to visit him. They've been with him in the last few weeks, several times since his death warrant was signed, have been able to visit him on multiple occasions. And just the startling fact of their forgiveness and their mercy that they've had on their father, I think is something that is incredibly moving, and a story that needs to be shared and needs to be talked about. For all the bitterness they could have given into, Curtizia in particular lost her mother and her grandmother. I just think it's a story worth reflecting on, worth thinking about the power of that forgiveness, what that is capable of, and how much more powerful ultimately that will be than the bitterness that could end Curtis's life. So I would like to thank all of you again for having me. Thanks again to Bridget and Grace.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. I want to share, what you and Bridget were talking about is, it reminds me of the federal execution spree, when we went for 6 months through a period of time where it was Friday nights that the white shirts would come in and tap you on the shoulder and you're off to death watch on the federal death row, and nobody knew who was going to be next. And it was like we knew if we could get through Friday night, then we had another week when there wasn't an execution date. They ended up executing 13 of those people. But once we figured out what was happening and we had reach into the death row to hear what was happening, I was up every Friday night waiting for that phone call to see who was next. You can only imagine. And I'll just share, today is Tuesday, and actually, just for a moment, and we'll be sharing this out on our social media as soon as it posts, but I was interviewed today on a post for a podcast called no execution Tuesday, I think it is, which basically for now 82 weeks in now dozens of Iranian prisons, on Tuesdays they fast in opposition to executions. And they do that because on Mondays they take you to death watch, and on Wednesday they execute you in Iran. And they have executed just in the past 6 weeks over 160 people, some for regular ordinary crimes and some for uh, uh, political crimes or alleged political crimes. But it's that was the one thing I could say and suggest in this interview was, the commonality between what happens on death row and in executions in Iran, which is a whole different world than it is here in the United States. But the commonality is, if you're one of those people waiting for that tap on the shoulder, or knowing that tomorrow they're going to come and get you and kill you, that's the reality that is happening more and more and more in the United States. And it's the reality that is happening practically every day in Iran and probably some other countries too. But I just wanted to share that very real, if you think that we're stressed out just fighting these things, just imagine what it is to be in prison, waiting for that tap on the shoulder, that knock on the door, and to be taken without warning. The only place where it doesn't quite happen like that is in Japan, where you find out the day of your execution just with a couple of hours notice. Today's your day. You get a few minutes to write a final note, and then your family finds out after they kill you. Same is true in Iran. They find out after they kill you. There's no farewells. Anyway, with all that, let's hear about David Pittman. And thank you again, Kevin. You're welcome. I want to share that I've had Mario Maraziti and others who are wonderful friends from San Egidio that have done tremendous work in Italy and around the world. San Egidio is one of the communities that has actually been working on abolishing the death penalty in a number of other countries, and successfully so. And often when we hear from the Pope on a case, it's because of the intervention of people from San Egidio. So those folks are connected, and they're doing tremendous work around the world, not just here in the United States and in Italy, but around the world. So thank you, Kevin. We're grateful for the work, and please share that to everybody. And one of the places I did share this video tonight is on the San Egidio Facebook group. So hopefully it's there. Anyway, Grace, welcome back to tell us about David Pittman.
Yeah, thank you, Abe. So David Pittman's warrant was just signed last week, I believe. He is on death row in Florida for the 1990 murder of Clarence and Barbara Knowles and Bonnie Knowles. So those were the family members of his estranged wife. And there's a lot to be said about David Pittman's case. Again, this is a case where the victims and the families are one and the same. And so we're dealing with folks who are victimized really on multiple levels. They're losing a family member, and they're also, after, 30 years, being told that this is going to be justice after a crime that happened so long ago. I think what's really important to know about David Pittman is that he's a person with intellectual disability. He's had multiple IQ tests throughout his time, and I'm a therapist by training, and I certainly have complaints about IQ tests, but I will say that he had remarkably consistent scores on IQ tests, except for one of his 6 that he took, and of course the state is running with that one. And it really seems that we are running a very serious risk of executing someone with an intellectual disability, which, like Abe said earlier, is unconstitutional, but they didn't define what that number is to call it ID. He also had horrific child abuse as a young person. I don't even want to detail it here because it's so difficult to look at. And I do think we need to look at it in the face, and we're going to continue to do that as we approach the execution. And then finally, I say that there's innocence claims in this case. And we know that at this late stage in the legal process, innocence claims are often not what stops an execution. But I do think it's important to say that this is something that David has maintained the whole time he's been on the row. And I'm sure it's something that is going to continue to come up throughout this warrant period. His execution is scheduled for September 17th. which is a Wednesday. Typically in Florida, we've been having Tuesday, Thursday executions. I'm not sure why we are now having a Wednesday execution, but that's happening. And we have a petition going. We're also going to have a letter writing campaign. And like we do for every execution, we are going to be on the ground at Florida State Prison and also at vigils around the state, protesting the execution and having a prayer service. There's also the virtual vigil that Death Penalty Action hosts. And sorry, I was reading the chat. The day after David Pittman's execution, Governor DeSantis is apparently going to debate Gavin Newsom. So that will be interesting in seeing if the death penalty comes up at all, because they are diametrically opposed on this. I will have more to say about David in the weeks ahead. I was going to read from an email I got from a guy on the road today who he was living kind of between Edward Zacharewski, who was a veteran who was executed just a few weeks ago, and David Pittman. And he sent me a fun story about them kind of messing with the guards, involved squirting water at the cell doors. But Securus is down, so I can't do that. But I think it's important just to note that these are real people with friendships and families and lives and interests and inside jokes. And we are we're extinguishing a real life when we do this. And we now have this guy who's on Florida death row, who his two neighbors have been led away and killed. And he sits there wondering if he's next. So I know we've said a lot tonight, but thank you all for continuing to show up for FADP and for the folks here and for allowing us to continue to do this work. It's been terrible this year, and it's been really rewarding to get to connect with so many wonderful people from around the country. So
Grace, you and Bridget and Maria are all sheroes to us. We are just grateful to be able to work with you, and thank you for sharing that humanizing story. I mean, that's the real thing that we are all struggling to do, is make sure that people understand these are people. They're not the worst thing that they ever did. They got them onto death row, and we need to figure out better ways to humanize them and to give them a voice, and that's what we're all trying to do. So thank you, Grace. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you for Kevin. And don't go away. And I want to tell everybody we've got a couple of special guests, and I also just wanted to share that. Well, I'm going to share that coming up. We're going to talk about Utah. We're going to also hear about a case that's coming up in Missouri. And so don't go away. Probably be about another 20, 25 minutes. We also have a brand new video about the firing squad that has never been seen. I've not even seen it. So we're going to see that in a few minutes as we talk about Utah. So welcome first, Michelle Beasley, who is on the ground and lives in Salt Lake City. And she is the coordinator for Utahns Against the Death Penalty. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to say it's only because people love so deeply that you are opened to be hurt with secondary trauma. So it's one of those. It's kind of like you break down your barrier. You let somebody in you love. You're willing to love, and then what happens is you can also be hurt. That the doorway goes both ways. So I'm just very proud of all of you. I'm very happy to get to know all of you, because that means that you're all very loving people. And I think, in my experience, what helps the most with trauma and secondary trauma is being present for each other. So I'm so grateful that we can all be present for each other today. So I am the coordinator for Utahns Against the Death Penalty. Last year, we said there was an execution for Tabron Honey, and that kind of got me on board. So this year, Ralph Menzies is up for execution. He murdered Maureen Hunsaker back in 1986. She was working at a gas station, and he kidnapped her, took her up to the canyon, tied her to a tree, sliced her throat. That was 39 years ago. Ralph Menzies is now in a wheelchair with dementia on oxygen. And he had selected prior to 2004, which was when Utah, I guess, ended firing squad. He had selected firing squad prior to that. So they're honoring him with that. I guess if honoring is the way you want to call it. But so the Utah Supreme Court met last week, and Ralph Menzies' attorneys have asked for another evaluation because they're claiming that the previous judge really shouldn't have had the determination or the ability to determine whether he was able to be eligible for execution. And they're saying he's got dementia. Let the dementia take him. He's not eligible for execution any longer. So we're waiting to hear. There's a slim chance that we'll have a stay. But we are preparing all the events similar to what you guys are doing in other states. And that's kind of where we're at. Thanks to Abe, we spoke with a lot of different people on radio stations, at the University of Utah School of Law, at churches. So we're hoping that the voices get out there more and more. We also, there's the daughter of Maureen Hunsaker, who was given up for adoption at birth. She only knew that Maureen Hunsaker was her mother when she was 16 years old. But her adopted parents sat her down in front of the news when she was 9 and had her watch the news about Maureen Hunsaker's murder, and found out later that in fact was her mother. So there's lots of victims around, as there are around the country. She's opposing Ralph Menzies' execution. There was an op-ed in the paper. It's all on our website, uadp.org. And of course, we also have had the pleasure of having Randy Gardner with us, and he's with us today. I would like to allow him to have a chance to say hello and speak a few words.
Michelle, Jen is here too, if you want to introduce her a little bit more.
Oh, Jen's here too. Jen.
Oh, hi.
I didn't know you were here, sweetheart.
Hi. I was hiding.
Just hiding. So wonderful. So this is Jen, the daughter of Maureen Hunsaker, and then I guess we'll go to Randy afterwards. So hi, Jen.
Hi. I'm guessing Abe just wants me to tell my story here. I don't know. Anyhow, what's that?
Go ahead, and we'll put a link to the op-ed in chat. But go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. Welcome, Jen Herron.
Well, my name is Jennifer Herron, or Jen Herron. I go by Jen. I'm the second born to Maureen Hunsaker. I'm the only child she placed for adoption. So I, as far as I know, I've never met her, other than at my birth. I found out when I was 9 years old because the adoption was through a friend of the family. I was sat down from the TV to watch the news coverage of her murder. And 7 years later, I was told that was my mother. Not only did Ralph Menzies take her away, he took my father because she never said who he was. And it wasn't until 3 years ago I found him through DNA. He took a lot away from me, and I won't lie, but I don't hate him. I hate what he did, but I'm not a hateful person. I don't know him, but I am against the death penalty. We're just it's just violence. We create more victims. How is it fair, right? I mean, I don't have something written here. I guess I'll just read it. It says, while our tax dollars fund incarceration, it is crucial to remind that the Constitution that grants us our freedom is also what safeguards us against cruel and unusual punishment. We cannot cherry pick which constitutional rights to uphold. To deny criminals their rights risks jeopardizing our own. Which constitutional right would we be willing to give up to treat criminals like animals? That's part of it. I have a whole million reasons, but in the end, it comes down to the victims that it creates. It creates more victims, and there's been enough hurt already.
Thank you so much, Jen. Many people are standing with you and supporting your speaking out and your efforts on this. So
thank you.
I was grateful to be honored to work with you and help elevate your voice. So that op-ed has gone far. And what we know also is that from the press conference last week, the Washington Post is actually working on an article, and other reporters are still working. So your voice will continue to ring out around this case, and as an alternative to the voice of those who are calling for the execution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, do you want to introduce Randy a little bit more?
Sure. Randy Gardner, a dear friend, unfortunately, that I met through this journey. Randy is the brother of Ronnie Lee Gardner, who was executed by firing squad in 2010. So Randy is reliving a lot lately. He presented photos, which I think maybe he'll talk about. So I'll just turn it over to Randy.
Hi. Yes, my name is Randy Gardner. I got involved with this anti-death penalty movement 15 years ago. On June 18th, 2010, my brother was executed here in Utah by firing squad. That was a pretty tough day. A lot of tough years to follow. I used to have dreams. I'm starting to have them again, unfortunately, but I used to have dreams of me executing my mother, her being in a wheelchair. And why, Randy, why? As I'm shooting her and bullets going down towards my mother, slow motion, and her blood explodes out of her chest, or my kids, or me executing my kids, or my kids executing me. This was pretty consistent for about 8 years. I kind of finally had to go to therapy. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, extreme PTSD. That's when I finally decided to reach out and get some help. I took a therapist and me working out with them for about 3 years for these dreams to really go away and end it. I just find out some new information here recently. We had a third party analyze my brother's autopsy photos and the autopsy report. Let me tell you, right after my brother was executed, and he went to the medical examiner's office because it was a homicide, so they had to do an autopsy. I kind of peeked at his chest, and I was hoping that I would see 4 bullets in his chest, because they shoot 5 guns, but 4 of them are actual live rounds, and one of them is a blank, so they don't really know who executed him. But I was kind of scared at that point that there was going to be shots in his arms or shots in his belly or something. But I did see in his whole chest area, I did see 4 holes in it. I zipped up the bag he was in. They cremated him, and I guess I was satisfied with that. But anyway, we had a doctor analyze the autopsy photos the other day for us and me, and he made the comment, and his expert opinion was that even though my brother did have 4 bullet hole wounds in his chest, they weren't near the heart or around the heart. They were around the heart, actually. He believes not one of those bullets even hit the heart, may have nicked one. The exit wounds where they come out the back, I was always curious about that, because they were so widespread on the back, a lot bigger in the front. But he thinks that was probably an intentional act. I mean, what they do is, before they executed my brother, they put a hood over his head. They took a white little heart, or a little target, and they put it on his chest where his heart should be, and that's where they were supposed to shoot. I can't imagine from 15 or 20 feet away how a marksman shooting a 30 caliber rifle wasn't able to all 4 of them hit the same spot, right in the center. I guess because I seen the 4 holes 15 years ago, I was okay with it. Now it's kind of opened up a whole new Pandora's box in my head, and it should do that, because why did they hit around his heart and not his heart? I mean, my logical conclusion is, they wanted to make him suffer. I don't know how else to deal with that. If anybody has a better answer for me, help me out, because it's really opened up my brain again and going crazy. And then they had the 2 executions in South Carolina. And
Randy,
he also handled.
Randy,
pardon?
we're going to share a little bit from the press conference, so you don't have to go through all of that.
Okay, good. I'm pretty well, yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'm just kind of broke about the whole thing again. I thought I was over it. You know, I'm never going to get over it. I'm never going to get closure because I keep doing what I do here. I don't think Ralph Menzies, I know Jennifer is not, she's not going to get closure in this. I don't know how they're going to be able to take this guy out of his wheelchair. He's 67 years old. He has dementia. I've seen the guy in courtrooms. Over the years, I've followed him. I actually have another friend that witnessed him visiting in the visiting room the other day, and they just said the lights are on, but he's not home. You know, and I can see that in the courtroom and see it on the news. I don't know what satisfaction anybody's going to get to take this old man that has dementia and on oxygen out of the wheelchair, put him in an execution chair, pin this heart to his supposed chest, and then hopefully they shoot straight. You know, hopefully they don't do what they've done on some of these other executions. Hopefully they get his heart and he you know, don't make him suffer. I just don't know what satisfaction anybody's going to get out of that. Even the family of Maureen Hunsakers, her kids, you know, they've been waiting 39 years to get the closure the prosecutor and everybody else has promised. So I think that's another problem with the death penalty. There's just so many problems with it. I'm just really, I don't know what to think anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. So I want to ask Nate Ralph to join us for a moment. He has been working to kind of synopsize or create a video out of the video of the press conference that we did on Friday. And Nate, if you want to just describe for a moment what we're about to see, and are any of the autopsy images in that video? I want to warn people if they are. Nope, you're muted. Or you're not muted, but I can't hear you.
How's that?
Turn it up a little bit.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I had my mic turned down. I think I cut out most of the autopsy videos. There are a couple, I think, that were like the most poignant for what he was discussing. I just tried to cut the video link down to get points as succinctly as possible. So a lot of that was cut out, but there are some in there.
Well, thank you for your work on this. Allie, if we're ready, just before she starts that, this is basically just a condensation of the press conference that we had the other day with Jen and Michelle and Randy and myself and Dr. John Groner, who is an expert and actually writing a book about execution methods. And he had the opportunity, well, he'll tell you himself. So we're going to watch this. It's just about 4 minutes to understand what we're talking about, because then we're going to talk about what we're doing about it in Utah and how you can help. So, Allie?
Thanks, Abe. Yeah, my name is Jonathan Groner, Groner. I'm a retired surgeon. I did trauma, burns, and acute care. I ran a pediatric trauma center here in Columbus for about 20 years. Cared for a lot of gunshot wound victims. So I have some knowledge of it. I've had the opportunity in my research for a forthcoming book to look at the autopsy photos, not just of Mr. Gardner's brother, but also of the 2 firing squad executions recently in South Carolina. So I have sort of some comparison and some comments to make on those. It's obviously a very violent death. And we can take a look at the autopsy photos and I can make some comments. So this is a close-up view of Mr. Ryan Lee Gardner's chest. And the nipple that you can see is his left nipple. So my comment here is that although people, like when you do the Pledge of Allegiance, you put your hand over your left chest, that's where you can feel the pulsation, because that's where the left ventricle sort of, as it beats, sort of radiates out that area. The heart is under your sternum. It's under your breastbone. And if you need proof of that, look at anybody who's had bypass surgery. Their scar is on their sternum. And I've assisted with a bunch of heart operations when I was a resident. I did a few myself for various things. And we split the sternum open and the heart is right there. And so the fact that these bullets are sort of lateral, meaning to the left of or past his left nipple, is to me concerning, that some of these bullets may not have gone to where the heart is. You can see that there's huge cavities, so they obviously made big holes. But it's just not what I expect. And at this point, I've seen the autopsy photos of Mr. Sigmund's execution. He has 3 bullet holes, and they're on the other side of the nipple, and they're very closely spaced. He was only shot by 3 people, not 4. I've seen the bullet wounds Mr. Mahdi's execution. His bullet wounds seem like they are nowhere near his heart, and we can discuss the reasons why that might have happened and what that means. But in theory, the firing squad execution shouldn't be botchable, right? The people firing the guns are trained to fire guns. They're 15 to 20 feet away, and they practice. So why some people seem to get it done right and some don't is an interesting thing that might be worth discussing.
You shared with me your supposition that there was a purposeful miss in, at least in South Carolina. I mean, it seems clear here too. Do you want to discuss that at all?
Sure. Well, I mean, I researched this pretty extensively. Good, hours studying the photos and trying to use a little measurement there to figure out. So, Mr. Sigmund had killed some family members, and he was white. And just put that out there. Mr. Mahdi had killed a law enforcement officer, and that is a very considered by the whole law enforcement community to be an extremely severe crime. And so, I mean, it's an open question, in a former Confederate state, would they treat a black man who killed a police officer differently than a white man who killed some family members? It's out there, and you can look at the bullet wounds, and they're very, very different. I don't know if the people doing the executions were the same 3 people, but the bullet wounds are very, very different. And if you read the accounts of what happened to Mr. Mahdi, it is quite clear that he did not die quickly. I think every witness saw movement for a number of seconds. I can't remember exactly. So it seems possible that there is some, sort of implicit bias in the execution process. I don't know anything about Mr. Gardner's history, if he would have done any things that would have upset the guards or made them mad or whatever. But given the location of bullets, you have to at least ask that question.
Thank you, Nate, for putting that together for us and for being on call to help us with these sorts of things. We're grateful for your presence. And by the way, Heidi, Nate is adjacent to St. Louis, so we might be able to recruit him in to help with some Missouri stuff. We're going to talk about Missouri in just a moment, but I do want to share and come back to Michelle in a moment, but I'm going to share the web page here of Utahns against the death penalty. It's still rather basic. We have to get the new logo that Ali has created for them together, but here's where you can find the petition. And also we're gathering up folks to sign a letter from leadership, people who are clergy or educators or business leaders or whomever, for a letter that we'll be presenting. And then, of course, we're inviting organizations around Utah to endorse the work of UADP and to join it. It's not set up as a coalition, but that's where we're at. And other tools here. This is where you could find that video that we made from last year's visit. And then the other thing I want to share with you is something that we're actually working on, because in that press conference and because we now have this evidence that they didn't shoot straight. They didn't shoot straight in Utah when they killed the last firing squad victim, Ronnie Lee Gardner. They deliberately missed. And I say deliberately because these are people that are supposed to be expert shooters. I mean, I've never had formal firearms training, and I can hit a bullseye from 15 feet with a rifle. I mean, come on. So that's the other piece that we're working on is some billboards. And I want to share with you that we've raised about $2,000 so far to these are the lower signs here are, and again, this message is for people that are for the death penalty, right? If you're going to do it, shoot straight. That's one of our messages. And of course, Utah does not need executions, but we're going to print up some handheld signs like you see us in different issues. And also these long and thin designs are set up as billboards. And we have gotten, it's a question of whether they'll approve our messages, but if they do, we're raising $5,000 to get those billboards up digitally as soon as they approve our art. And we've got about $2,000 gathered so far. Half of that is put in by one person who put in $1,000 who committed that. So we're still raising money to be able to afford that. We're going to raise some money to print these handheld signs. Actually, hopefully, the Utah Supreme Court will tomorrow or soon just grant that new evaluation of Mr. Menzies' mental capacity, and then he won't be executed if they do that, based on what everybody who's actually seen him recently says. But if they don't, if they say he's good enough to kill, or we're going to medicate him, or whatever it is that they're going to do, then we're going to be out there strong, and we're looking for the resources to be able to come out strong with our message. Michelle, do you want to talk a little bit more about the looks like we might have lost Michelle. She was on hold to go. Yes, we have. So she was on hold to go into another meeting. So we're organizing. We're going to be tolling our bells. We're working on getting churches from around the state to be tolling their bells at 11 a.m. on the 4th. So the execution date is the 5th, but it's actually just after midnight, 12 a.m. on the 5th. So it's really the evening of the 4th. And that's when the vigil will start. And 11 a.m. on the 4th, we're going to present our petitions to the governor and all of that. So there'll be a big press conference in Salt Lake City at 11 a.m. And then if the execution isn't halted, we'll be going to the prison, or rather the free speech zone that they set up outside, about 2 miles away from the prison. And it'll probably be in exactly the same spot as it was last year for the execution of Tabor and Honey. And what will happen then is, we'll be in this free speech zone and doing what we do at the vigils outside of prison. So that's the situation in Utah. I see a question here. Nicole is asking, would the bullets even pierce someone? Yeah, Nicole, what they do is they sit you up in a chair and they strap you back, and there's a target that's pinned on your chest. And that's how that would work. That's Utah. That's Florida. That's Alabama. That's Texas. And all of this is happening. And sometimes, and one of the frustrations that I have and others of us in our movement have is that some people are only talking about an execution that's scheduled in October of Robert Robertson. And that execution deserves to be discussed and deserves all the attention that it's getting. But we want to make sure that we're talking about every single one of these executions. So that's why we do the forecast. It's why we hammer on these petitions and do the petition deliveries. And tomorrow, by the way, we'll be delivering a petition in Florida. But we wanted to make sure that we know. So now actually there's 4 people that are, Blaine Milam's claim is he was present. So that's a law parties case, which is different from having nothing to do with the murder. And that's the suggestion with Robert Robertson, that there was no crime. And you can read all about that. And there's a petition with lots of links and all that on deathpenaltyaction.org. But also, we're going to heard a little bit a little while ago about Alabama and the case of blanking on his name. I'm sorry. Here we are. That's Jeff's guy, in one of the people Jeff is working with, Anthony Boyd in Alabama. But I want to welcome and introduce, first, thank you everybody from Utah. And I want to welcome and introduce Heidi Moore, who is the new executive director of Missourians Against the Death Penalty, to share a bit about her work and what's happening in Missouri, and also Lance Shockley and the campaign around him. And Gigi, if she's still here, may also join us to talk about that. But first, Heidi Moore.
Hey, Allie, thanks for your team for doing the forecast. There's been some really moving stories tonight, as there is every month. which is unfortunate. I would like to put the focus on Lance's case more than anything about my new position. I'm about 8 weeks in. I'm happy that they selected me. This has been a passion of mine for years. But I did walk into the middle of a clemency campaign. Thankfully, Andrew Bailey is out as the Missouri Attorney General. Unfortunately, he's with the FBI now. And our new Attorney General is Catherine Hanaway, who does support the death penalty. However, she is at least reasonable. Lance's case, Lance has always maintained his innocence. The I Stand With Lance website is one of the websites. There's multiple petitions out there. I personally, as the organization with MADP, I don't care which petition you sign. You just sign one of the petitions. There's a ton of information on the I Stand With Lance website, but I want to highlight a few things. The state even said that this is all circumstantial evidence. They claim that Lance killed a Missouri State Highway Patrol trooper because the trooper was investigating him. I have worked in the criminal justice system for decades, and never once has a criminal, an accused person, a suspect believed that if they killed the cop investigating them, it would stop the investigation. I mean, that alone is just an absurd claim. But as you look at the timeline, which will be available, and as you read appeals, the trooper clocked out at work at 4:03 from his car in his driveway, and he was ambushed in his driveway. Lance had an alibi at that time that was never brought up in court. There's over 100 witnesses that were never interviewed. They focused on Lance, and they stayed focused on him. There is an appeal right now because they've requested emergency DNA testing on at least 16 pieces of evidence that were found at the crime scene that were never tested. That evidence is in custody with the Missouri State Highway Patrol, who investigates their trooper being shot. Aside from that, so they're still waiting for the appeal to see if they're going to be able to do the DNA testing or not. The other stuff, Lance is a person now versus who he was then. He had a substance abuse issue, but now he's president of the Restorative Justice Organization at Potosi. Missouri has an inmate peer support program. Lance was in the very first class. Lance was counseling the other men before their executions. Yes, you heard me correctly. The other men that Missouri has been executing the past several years, Lance was a counselor for them. Lance has been, he's been a model inmate. I was told that when they read him his death warrant, that the prison staff that read it had tears in their eyes. They called him in to handle issues and to talk to people in the prison when there were issues within the prison. The case itself had a ton of issues. Supposedly, I'm trying to find that screen real quick. A jail guard claimed he heard Lance confess. So the Missouri Public Defenders pulled out, and then Lance had to hire a lawyer. The jury foreman had written a fictional book. His son was a cop, and the book was about a person who had been involved in a substance abuse related accident and vigilante justice, which is very similar to Lance's crime. That jury foreman was not removed until after the finding of guilt or innocence. Now, Missouri and Indiana are the two states that allow a judge to override when there is a deadlocked jury. And in Lance's case, the jury was deadlocked and the judge imposed the death sentence. So the jury, it's not Texas and Oklahoma. I know Florida has a different law, but it's typically standard that if the jury's deadlocked, it's supposed to go to life without parole. But Missouri and Indiana are two states that the judge can impose a death sentence regardless of how the jury is split. So the foreman was removed, but then they went back in for the sentencing part. What is it going to be, life without parole or death? And no one investigated, not the judge, not the lawyers, of what had occurred in that jury room and the actual influence that jury foreman may have had. The timeline is so narrow that the state has forced in this case. And witnesses have now said that they were adjusted their testimony to fit the narrative of the state. The state allowed, junk science was used, bad ballistic evidence. The experts didn't even agree in the case. The I Stand with Lance website is amazing with what Gigi's team and the legal team has done to put all the information that any of us need to talk about the case. The MADP website, we also have a petition. Death Penalty Action has one, and I think the Catholic Mobilizing Network may have one as well. Lance has 2 adult daughters who do not want to see their dad murdered by the state of Missouri. And right now we're hoping, this is Governor Kehoe's, this would be his first execution. Parsons had gone on a killing spree, as most of you know, when Elise and ML were on here talking about those regularly. This would be the first execution under Kehoe, who is a staunch Catholic. And we are hoping that he pays attention to the clemency campaign, that he's going to pay attention to these petitions, and he's going to see that Lance has always maintained his innocence and that the state itself said that this was a circumstantial case. Gigi, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, Heidi, thank you so much. That was a really awesome walk through. There's so much going on with this case. There's so many holes in the state's timeline. In fact, we're going to have a graphic representation up on the website very soon. And when you look at it, you'll just be shocked and gobsmacked. I know that the juror misconduct angle, the juror actually gave out copies of this book in addition to the entire jury to the bailiff and the judge, and still was not removed until after the guilt phase. I think which may have contributed to the hung jury. I honestly don't know. I wasn't there. I know that Lance leads worship services in the house where he is. I know he's been asked by guards to step in and break up issues between other peers in that house, as well as throughout the prison. He's an exceptional human being who's gotten a very raw deal. The fact that there were 130 other suspects who went largely uninvestigated, the fact that we're right now petitioning to have 16 pieces of evidence tested for DNA that have gone untested. Those are just a few of the things. We have 1,200 signatures on our petition. We're happy to add it to the signatures on everybody else's petitions. You can also sign up there. If you do come to our website, there's a place to sign up to opt in for the newsletter from us. In addition to the amazing other newsletters, we're able to give case updates directly that way as well. And I'm happy to share with our partners here who share that information as well with their email lists. So just go please and sign that petition. We are definitely collecting signatures, and we are working on other actions that we're going to be announcing, I would say, next week. So I'll make sure to update through Abe, as well as through our own site and through MADP. And just thank you for the opportunity to talk about Lance. He's really an exceptional person. I'll be talking to him at the end of this week, and I know he'll be very, very grateful for the work that this group is doing to share his case.
Thanks, G. And can I add something, Abe? Before I even started the position, I read the appeal at the recommendation because it was the judicial loophole and Lance had a date. And one of the lawyers put in the appeal, and it just has always stood out to me, my client is not so stupid to believe that killing the investigator stops the investigation. And like that alone just made me pause, that a lawyer was that clear in an appeal, and that my client is not that stupid to believe this. And that has just stuck with me, just like Sergeant Graham clocking out at 4:03, but witnesses heard gunshots between 3:45 and 4:15, while Lance was somewhere else. So anyway, thank you for giving us this platform, and thanks for all the work everyone on here is doing, and for all the watchers who support abolishing the death penalty across the country and the world.
Well, amen. We're just grateful for all of you. And thanks to everybody who stuck around. You know, this is one of the longer forecasts, but we have a number of cases to talk about tonight. And if there is any questions, now's the time to put them in to the chat or the Q&A, or else we're going to wind it down. Of course, you can always email us, and we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as we can. Allie has a few announcements, and I do as well. So let's just get on to that, and then we'll close it out. So Allie?
Yeah, thank you. So you probably have already seen some of these circulating on our social media pages, and if you come to our vigils and other programs, I'm probably sounding like a broken record by now. However, we have a number of different things that we're working on, events and other things. I am gonna plug our t-shirt design contest real quick because that is still ongoing, and we are still inviting anybody who is creative or knows people that are to help us design a new t-shirt. We're still gonna have our other t-shirts. We just want something fresh to be able to introduce to folks. We are also compiling a list of all kinds of resources that you guys have found helpful when learning about the death penalty. This can be books, this can be blogs, this can be websites, films, just like any kind of resource that has really helped you learn about this topic and or how to take action against the death penalty in the country. And the reason why we are compiling this list is because there's a group that is that invited us to curate a book list for them, and the book list is going to simultaneously help independent booksellers while also raising funds for Luigi Mangioni's legal expenses. And so they invited us to curate a book list about the death penalty, and we wanted to get input from other people instead of just us curating that list on our own. So if you could fill that out by the end of the week, that would be helpful, or send it to anybody that you think could add to it. That would be awesome. We also mentioned earlier there's a self-care Instagram live coming up probably closer to the end of next month. We also have a event that we are hosting on September 10th. I still haven't put the Zoom and the graphics together. Those are coming in the next day or two. But it's going to be like a letter writing 101. It's in partnership with some of our supporters, as well as Wire of Hope and the Death Row Support Project. It's not just going to be about what it's like to actually write the letter, because Death Row Support Project and Wire of Hope already have some resources about that, but just all that's involved in that. So if you're interested in learning more, if you wanted to become a pen pal and weren't quite sure where to go, that's happening the evening of September 10th, 7:45 p.m. Eastern. We're also planning a couple of TikTok lives. Now that we have over 1,000 followers on TikTok, we can go live on TikTok. So I'm not exactly sure when those are going to happen, probably in the next few weeks, but keep an eye out for that. I think those are my updates. Thanks, Abe.
Well, thank you very much, Allie, for all that hard work. And of course, we'll be getting messages out about these things in our various email communications. So watch for that. Again, we are watching for a ruling in actually a number of cases on these, but in particular, we're following this Ralph Menzies thing in Utah. And again, I want to actually just confess that I actually had a big mistake that I made. I missed a deadline for a grant application, which means that we're $50,000 in have a big hole in our budget for this calendar year. So we've got a special push on to try to fill that gap. So if you know anybody that might be in a position to help us, Allie's going to put the link to that, or people can just email me. But we're looking for, we're grateful for every 25 and 50 and 100 and $1,000, but really we're looking for people that can also come in at a level of 10,000 or 25,000. And those people are actually what keep us going. And if we're unable to fill that, by September 14th, I'm going to need to be cutting drastically, not just our staffing, but also our programming. So we're working very hard to fill that gap. And again, we're asking people, if you know somebody that can help, and it's not just us that needs money, there's lots of other organizations, all of the state organizations, but we want to keep death penalty action at least doing what we normally do, in addition to trying to expand. And on top of that, we're also always looking for funds to do special projects, such as the billboards that we want to put up in all over Salt Lake City, asking the government there to make sure that if they're going to kill Ralph Menzies by firing squad, that the firing squad actually shoots a kill shot, not a shot to outside of the range of the heart, which would then force him to be bleeding to death for some number of seconds or even minutes, as we've seen in the past. So that's our big priority right now, is just making sure we've got another op-ed that we're working on, as well as just lifting up the organizing. Michelle sent me a note to say that her phone ran out of juice, so that's why she was unable to say farewell herself. But in any case, we're grateful for all the support that we have, and we're grateful to every one of you who comes or is watching this now, for sharing the petitions, sharing the opportunities for people to take action on the death penalty, in whatever way that you can. And also, next week, you'll be hearing from us with an opportunity to give us feedback on what are some other things that can be done that we've not been promoting, that maybe we haven't thought about. What are some different ways people can take action to help stop executions, or at least shine a spotlight on execution so more people can know about them? And as I like to say, our job isn't necessarily to change anybody's mind. It would be enough just if we can find the people that agree with us and get them to do something, and get them to do things that are productive. Because we are in many ways preaching to the choir, but sometimes the choir isn't singing the right song. And sometimes it's not singing the wrong song too loud. And, everything needs to be thought about strategically as to how can we move the people in power with who have the ability to stop executions. And we're looking for some fresh ideas. So please give that some thought. Watch for the opportunity to give us that input. And again, think about, who do you know? Who do you know that if you were to actually say to them, hey, I'm involved in this work, and I know it's not your thing, but you know me, and you love me and care about what I care about, I hope, and would you help? And here's a way. That's all fundraising is. It's not asking anybody for anything, it's inviting people to help. And that's what we need right now. I am asking you, think about who you know that you could invite to help you, help us do this work more and better together. With that, Allie, do we have a closing video set up?
I do not. What one do you have in mind?
Well, let's just find one. I'll go over to the death penalty action. Let's see, where am I? We'll go over here, and you can watch how we find this. So let's see. So this is that form that I was talking about, where you can put in your favorite books and record and music and films and all the things. You can make those suggestions. But if you find yourself to deathpenaltyaction.org and you scroll down, just down to, you can stop here and put all your money in here, and then come on down to looks like it's, here it is, all the way at the bottom, the people versus the death penalty. And this is where you can find a whole selection of videos that we made a few years ago that are still totally perfect. And let's share the one about Rodney Reed's brother, Roderick Reed, today. This is Roderick Reed. He's great support. I had for all of us being part of this work too. So here you go. And thanks for being with us tonight.
I had other big brothers, but Rodney was the one that doted over me. He's the one that helped me, tie my shoes. He's the one that you know, looked out for me when I first started school. My dad had this made about 20 years ago. They covered up evidence, they suppressed stuff, they violated a whole bunch of his rights. There's a lot of prosecutorial misconduct in this case. There was tampering with evidence. There was a whole bunch of stuff. Those guys helped stage that murder and everything else, and they set Rodney up, never anticipating on the fact that, number one, that the family was not going for it. We wasn't going to lay down. My mother said on the courthouse steps, y'all may try to take my son's life, but I promise you, the whole world will know about it. It's been, I don't even know how to even say it, man, because I can't even say it's been because I'm still living it, you know. It's been in so many different marches and rallies, and I remember when we first put it up, a lot of people thought we was, I don't know, kind of crazy for, you know, putting that up, thinking that we was asking for trouble, you know, but no, we was telling the truth. We was making a statement. I went down February 14th, and we had a good visit. And we go once a month, you know, my mom and I. You behind glass, you don't get to touch him, you don't get to be and have no contact whatsoever. There he is right there, that's Rodney. I'm right up under him, you know, we did everything together and slept in the same bed together, you know, coming up as kids. We both slept in a twin, you know. You know, we got the innocence flags flying. He got grandkids he's never held. He hasn't touched his kids in nothing, you know what I mean? His kids done grew up from babies, now they got kids of their own, and stuff that he should be here for. To live this life and to do what we, our family, are doing takes a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice, and a lot of love to do this.
We're standing out here outside of the walls to protest this murder.
To take another life, all that's doing is causing more pain. All that's doing is hurting other people. More pain and more hurt. How's that gonna help? How's that gonna heal? If you look at the statistics, there's more black people that's put to death than any other. They found another way to enslave us, you know. Wrongfully convictions, you get them down there, you work them. You're gonna make money off them people. Then you're gonna get paid to house them. You know what I mean? It's all a racket. If you don't do something positive with the pain and the anger and everything that's in you, you know what I mean? Because you know what they're trying to do to your family, it could mess you up. So this is a way for me to release, to not only help others, but help myself at the same time. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't have family members out there fighting for them, don't have, you know, people standing up for them. That's what we try to do. We try to be the voice for the voices. I'm not just fighting for him, I'm fighting for everybody that's on death row now, you know, trying to be that beacon, that horn. You know, I'm trying, you know what I mean? That's all I can do is try.